Welcome back. Today, we're exploring an absolutely fascinating intersection of the physical world and corporate accountability. We are looking at the real estate industry, but definitely not from the usual perspective of property values or interest rates. Instead, we're diving into how this massive sector actually accounts for its non-financial impacts, specifically its environmental footprint and its ethical governance, using the SASB standards. Let's crack open the numbers and see what they really reveal.
Here's our roadmap for this explainer. We'll start with the real estate standard itself, examine the physical footprint of buildings, and track sustainability services. Then, we'll shift gears to the professional integrity pillar, and finally cover how we measure transparency and trust.
So I want you to keep this question in the back of your mind as we go. How do we actually measure the true impact of the buildings we live and work in? It's so easy to look at a massive skyscraper and literally just see glass and steel, or look at a transaction and just see a giant dollar sign. But to really get a grip on the true impact of real estate services, we've got to anchor these abstract accounting codes to the real-world physical consequences they represent.
Section 1. The Real Estate Standard, Setting the Baseline. Okay, so before we get into the weeds with the metrics, we have to know who's actually setting the rules here. Enter the SASB standards. Categorized under the Sustainable Industry Classification System, these are now under the umbrella of the International Sustainability Standards Board, the ISSB, which is part of the IFRS Foundation. Think of these standards as the ultimate toolkit for investors. They're designed to track those absolutely critical non-financial real estate impacts. Basically, they require entities to lay it all out there, identifying the specific sustainability risks and opportunities that could legitimately affect their cash flows or cost of capital. Moving right along to Section 2, Buildings, Energy, and Emissions, the Physical Footprint.
Now this is where things get really tangible. In the real estate services industry, the buildings that clients own or occupy have a massive sustainability impact. According to the standard, buildings and everything happening inside them are major drivers of 4 specific environmental factors: energy consumption, direct and indirect greenhouse gas emissions, water consumption, and waste generation. These 4 drivers are essentially the mechanics of how buildings actively contribute to environmental degradation. We're not just talking about the physical space they occupy. We're talking about the continuous, heavy stream of resources they consume and the waste they're generating every single day.
But hey, it's not all doom and gloom. This is exactly where the big opportunity lies. Entities can actively step in and mitigate these impacts through targeted services. And this perfectly highlights the difference between your standard run-of-the-mill property management and active environmental mitigation. On one hand, you've got standard facilities maintenance, basic janitorial stuff, fixing leaky pipes. On the other hand, you have energy and sustainability services. We're talking proactive, resource efficiency measures here like utility data management, smart energy procurement, or helping a building get officially certified with LEED or Energy Star. Offering these proactive services isn't just a win for the planet. It's a huge value add. It can drive exciting new revenue growth, slash operating costs, and really boost the overall asset value for owners.
Section 3. Tracking Sustainability Services, Measuring Mitigation. So, how do companies actually prove they're doing this work? Well, they rely on the SASB metrics table. If you look at it, it's essentially split into 2 main chunks that mirror our dual-pillar framework. The top half is all about sustainability services. That's the environmental mitigation we just talked about. And the bottom half tackles transparent information and management of conflict of interest, which we'll hit in just a bit. This framework right here is exactly how a company formally proves to its investors that they are, in fact, moving the needle. Let's break down these top 3 codes real quick because they're crucial. First up, 410A.1. This targets the actual revenue generated directly from sustainability services. Then we have 410A.2 and 3. These metrics zoom in on the physical footprint, meaning the floor area and the sheer number of buildings that are either receiving these services or securing official energy ratings, like an EU Energy Performance Certificate or an Energy Star rating. By tracking hard revenue and certified floor area, a company totally moves past vague greenwashing and proves real, quantifiable environmental mitigation. It's the show me the money of sustainability.
Now, you are going to hear the phrase operational control constantly in these metrics, especially when we're talking about floor area under management. So let's clear up that technical jargon. The standard defines operational control as having the actual ability to introduce and implement operating policies, health and safety policies, or environmental policies. This is a super important distinction. Why? Because it tells investors exactly who is in the driver's seat. It clarifies who actually has the power to roll out these crucial sustainability initiatives inside a given building. All right, shifting gears. Section 4, the professional integrity pillar, trust in transactions.
The standard lays out this really bold premise, and it hits the nail right on the head. The real estate services business model is dependent on client trust and loyalty. I mean, it really is that simple. Because a single real estate organization can offer so many overlapping services, we're talking everything from brokerage to appraisal to property management, managing conflicts of interest becomes highly challenging. It's like navigating a minefield. Without rock-solid professional integrity, client loyalty simply vanishes, putting long-term revenue seriously at risk.
One of the absolute highest risk areas for these conflicts is what's called a dual agency transaction. By definition, this is a transaction where the entity represents both the buyer and the seller in the exact same real estate sales brokerage transaction. Just think about that for a second. If you're representing the seller who wants the absolute highest price and simultaneously representing the buyer who wants the absolute lowest price, yeah, the conflict of interest is pretty glaring. Tracking the revenue from these specific transactions is a prime indicator for investors looking at a firm's true exposure to ethical risks.
Another major hotspot for risk? Appraisal services. This is simply the act or process of developing an opinion of value for a property. Now, if a real estate firm is the one providing the appraisal that sets a property's baseline value, and then they're turning around and generating revenue from brokerage or financing services on that exact same property, you can see the issue. That scenario carries a very high risk of negligence and serious ethical conflict.
Section 5, measuring transparency and trust, governance and accountability.
Investors don't just want good vibes. They need hard data on these ethical risks. That means closely tracking the revenue from those dual agency transactions and appraisal overlaps we just discussed. That's under codes 510A.1 and 510A.2. But honestly, perhaps the biggest kicker here is code 510A.3. This metric demands the outright disclosure of monetary losses from legal proceedings. We're talking malpractice, fraud, bribery, the whole shebang. By tracking these three specific metrics, investors can precisely quantify a company's real financial exposure to professional integrity risks.
But look, it's not just about reporting the bad news after it happens. The standard also requires entities to explain exactly how they're actively managing these risks. Companies have to detail the progressive steps they take to ensure duty of care. Typically, this looks like a three-step playbook. Step 1. Notify all employees of the ethics codes and run rigorous training. Step 2. Implement safe, secure mechanisms for internal reporting so people can actually flag violations. And Step 3. Enforce compliance through real investigations and disciplinary procedures. These aren't just nice-to-haves. They are the absolute necessary steps to avoid those devastating monetary losses from legal battles.
Which brings us to our final thought for today. Whether we are measuring the literal gigawatts of energy a building consumes or scrutinizing the ethical integrity of the broker selling it, the real estate services industry leaves a massive footprint on our world. And the SASB standards give us the exact lens we need to see it clearly. So, I want to leave you with this final question. Are your real estate services actively driving sustainability and building trust, or are they just driving up environmental and financial risks? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and as always, keep learning.